As we know, one of the most impactful movements of the 21st century was the Civil Rights Movement. It brought long-awaited freedoms that white Americans were entitled to Black Americans. It became illegal for racial segregation to occur in schools through the Supreme Court case of Brown versus the Board of Education. This led to Black students not being forced to attend under-resourced schools, being able to have integrated learning, and having better resources for a promising future. However, according to the National Commission on Teaching in America's Future, Black students have less than a 50% chance of getting a math or science teacher with a license or a degree in the field. I know there are many questions spinning in everyone's head. What? How is this possible? Who allowed this to happen? And what can we do to fix this? Today, I aim to speak to you all on the root cause of Black inequalities in the American education system, slavery, the disparities of being a Black student, and the possible reforms that could reverse these damaging effects for future Black generations. First, I will begin to talk about the thing America tries so hard to forget and is constantly swept under the rug, slavery. It is a driving factor in the continuation of inequality and inequity for Black Americans because of its influence by white supremacy. The United States utilized African American slave labor to establish national dominance. The reason why racism in education became institutionalized is because for hundreds of years, African Americans were denied access to books. This denial has led to Black inferiority and uplifted white supremacy. The first time some Black Americans had access to literature dates back to working on the plantations. In this times, slaves only had access to the Bible or were fortunate enough to have owners willing to teach them. Even then, many slaves were tortured, beaten, or even killed for having the ability to read because it ruined the idea of Black people being inferior. Also, if slaves were able to read, it would provide a choice for them not to be slaves, which could end African American slavery longer than what was wanted. Applying this information into present day, I see the disparities in education in my own county. In Essex County, New Jersey, many African Americans are isolated into impoverished cities of Newark, Orange, and East Orange with the lowest standardized test scores in New Jersey. Newark, New Jersey has an average SAT score of an 1860 out of 1600, while white Americans are huddled into affluent towns such as Short Hills, Milburn, and Livingston with the highest standardized test scores in New Jersey and even in the United States. Milburn, New Jersey has an average SAT score of a 1350 out of 1600, which is the second highest rank in New Jersey. Keep in mind, the national average for the SAT is a 1050. These test scores directly reflect the access Black students have to achieving. According to Brookings, minority students are more likely to have fewer and lower quality books, curriculums, and laboratories, have significantly larger class sizes, have less qualified teachers, and have less access to a high quality curriculum. Society has not changed, rather it has made more attempts to hide its racism. And I'll ask all of you this. What is the difference between restricting Black students from access to books, causing low intellectual proficiency in the 21st century, and slaves being restricted to only reading the Bible, causing Black inferiority centuries ago? Moving on to the differences in the education that Black and white students receive in America. It begins with discussing in the 1960s, most African Americans were educated in segregated schools, which were funded many times lower than white schools. Also, African Americans were entirely excluded from many higher education institutes. In present day, educational experiences for Black students have continued to be separate and unequal. Research has shown that there are 5 factors that influence student achievement: equality, small school size, 300 to 500 students optimally, small class sizes, especially at the elementary school level, a challenging curriculum, and having high quality, highly trained teachers. However, Black students are much less likely to receive any of these resources. In predominantly Black schools, schools are reaching up to 3,000 students. Class sizes are 15% larger. The curriculum and materials are lower quality, and the teachers are much less qualified in terms of education, training, and certification. My parents realized the tragedies of going to predominantly Black schools because they experienced it themselves. My mother is from the south side of Chicago and went to public school until ninth grade when she was given the opportunity to attend boarding school. She was able to escape these disparities of being a Black student by going to this school and learned from teachers and students that believed in education and was a place of learning. She believes and she describes it as a transformative experience. My father had a similar experience growing up in Brooklyn, New York. Once he attended college, which was predominantly white, he learned the value of education and saw the disparity of being a Black student. When they had children, they refused to place us in public schools where their children would learn from a place of devaluement and hopelessness. They have made many sacrifices for us to attend white schools to ensure that the American education system would not hold us back. In my experience of attending predominantly white schools, I have learned the value of education at a very young age, but it has come at the sacrifice of sacrificing my own culture. I've had to give up being surrounded by people that look like me in order to receive an education that is worthwhile. The main reason why I chose this topic is because I wanted to understand why and how being Black and receiving a good education seem to be mutually exclusive. I interviewed Mayor Dwayne Warren of Orange, New Jersey. We met over Zoom to discuss the disparities that Black students face in public education. Mayor Dwayne D. Warren was elected in 2012 into the city of Orange, a predominantly Black city, after serving as Orange Municipal Court judge and city council research officer, and has 29 years of law practice. He describes Orange to be a small town with big city problems because of the mass amount of diversity in class, in race, and in businesses. His mission has been to move Orange forward by utilizing their diversity and other resources to promote reform in their development, infrastructure, and programming. Examples of Mayor Warren completing his mission are the creation of the STEM Innovative Academy, which has improved technology usage for students, having better access, creating better access to books, which has drastically increased literacy rates and standardized testing, and hiring more teachers of color, which has added to representation and inclusion in the public school environment. Mayor Warren has tried to ensure that race does not play a role in the education of Orange residents. Through offering African American history from the elementary school level to high school, Orange Public Schools have progressed past the institutionalized silence of African American contributions. The biggest ways we can fix the American education system for Black students to face less disparities is the United States government providing reparations, our towns and cities creating better environments for Black students, and taking political actions. Reparations, which are paying money to amend a wrong, could build the $800,000 wealth gap between Black and white households through direct payments. Also, reparations could be used to improve predominantly Black school systems and Black institutions such as Morehouse and Spelman College. Another way to bridge the gap in the education system is by providing more resources to Black students. For example, Mayor Warren has created a new school for Black students interested in STEM and has mandated that African American history be taught. We can force our towns and cities to take these actions to reverse this institutionalized racism. The biggest impact that citizens have is by voting and filling out the census. Making political impact leads to everlasting change. Be sure to vote in local, state, and federal elections, which includes voting for presidents, senators, representatives. As Martin Luther King once said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice anywhere. We need to reform injustice in the American education system in order to dismantle racial injustice in the United States. Thank you.